would you start?
Unless you want to do 2 years of seminary, I'd say go straight for the jugular. The entire Christian faith hinges on the resurrection of Jesus. If it didn't happen, it's a house of cards.
Right, so where are the facts, Dr. Habermas? The resurrection narrative is more legend than it is history.
Really? Not according to historical records. Did you know that we have a report of the resurrection with specific eyewitnesses that dates all the way back to within months of the resurrection itself?
But they were already followers of Jesus.
Well, not all of them. Think of Saul of Tarsus. He originally was a persecutor of Christians. He hunted them down and killed them. Yet he died the Apostle Paul, proclaiming that Jesus was the Son of God.
But let's not kid ourselves here. People die for lies all the time.
900 people died drinking poison Kool-Aid at Jonestown.
True, and there are other examples like that throughout history, but here's the difference. People don't willingly drink poison for something that they know is a lie.
Fair point.
If the early church martyrs knew that the resurrection was a hoax, then why would they willingly die for it? Would you?
I have one of the fragments in my collection. It's quite a treasure, isn't it? After the New Testament and the Iliad, the runners-up don't even come close. We only have 100 copies of Sophocles, 7 copies of Plato's Tetralogies, and only 5 copies of anything by Aristotle. In fact, if you laid the surviving copies of Aristotle one on top of the other, they would make barely 4 feet. You do the same with surviving copies of the New Testament, the stack would be a mile high. Nothing else in history even comes close. How is that for reliable? And no one's ever proven if the shroud is the actual burial cloth of the Christ. But whenever someone looks in those eyes for the first time, the Galilean who hung on the cross 2 millennia ago suddenly becomes a real person.
But why would he do it? Why allow himself to be killed? If he really is the Son of God, why not use his power to defend himself?
The answer to that is what got me out of the dirt and into the church. It's really very simple. Love.
Maybe the reason that the tomb was empty was because Jesus' body was never there in the first place. Because we know that the Romans used to throw the bodies of crucifixion subjects to the dogs, right?
Well, there's no evidence for that, but there are specific records that didn't happen to Jesus.
And what records are those?
Well, actually, the earliest recorded accounts tell us that Jesus was properly buried in a tomb. And the Romans did allow for burial of some crucifixion victims.
But then there's something that still doesn't add up to me about all of these supposed eyewitnesses that claim to have found Jesus' empty tomb.
What, the fact that they were all women?
Yeah, because we know that according to Jewish customs, women were deemed to be unreliable witnesses. Am I right?
Well, true. So why did all 4 gospel writers record that it was women who discovered the empty tomb?
I'm asking you that.
Well, if you were a first-century Jew making up this story out of thin air, then you would never say that women discovered the tomb.
I can refer you to one of the most impartial sources that I know. You trust the Journal of the American Medical Association?
Of course, it is a stellar scientific journal, and I will admit that. On the physical death of Jesus, clearly the weight of the medical and historical evidence indicates that Jesus was dead before the wound to his side was inflicted. Accordingly, interpretations based on the assumption that Jesus did not die on the cross appear to be at odds with modern medical knowledge. Somebody going to do an investigation into Christianity. Where would you start?
But whenever someone looks in those eyes for the first time...
How can we even talk about historical evidence for the resurrection? The Gospels are filled with contradiction.
The empty tomb is based on evidence. And isn't evidence your trade?